Welcome to the BlockByte Weekly. Over the last week, digital asset prices moved modestly higher despite spiking up during the middle of the week. The reason for that spike was the 0.25% cut that we saw out of the US, so the Federal Reserve cutting interest rates by 0.25%. We also saw towards the end of the week on Friday, the Fed has made a decision to continue its Treasury purchasing program. So they're going to be buying around $40 billion of US government issued treasuries every single month. So that's a significant addition of liquidity entering into the market that hasn't been there over the last 3 years. The other major story is really the one of the treasury strategies. So on the Bitcoin side, Strategy purchased $962 million worth of Bitcoin over the last week. Prices went up to $95,000 before correcting down to around $90,000 currently. And the largest Ethereum treasury company, BitMine, purchased $435 million worth of Ethereum, bringing its total holdings to around 3.2% of all circulating Ethereum. Now, these two companies alone are largely holding up the price of these two major digital assets, but there is no sign that they're planning to stop purchasing anytime soon. So these are real structurally bullish demand drivers. In other news, Ripple, Circle, BitGo, Paxos, and Fidelity Digital Assets received preliminary approval from the US Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, bit of a mouthful there, to form national trust banks. Now, a national trust bank is a federally regulated crypto custody and trust service. It doesn't allow those banks to issue stablecoins and currencies. However, it is actually pretty good news for companies like Ripple. And the main reason being is that Ripple operates across various jurisdictions in the US currently, across multiple states, and every single state has its own unique money transmitter laws and licenses that a company needs to apply for. When an entity becomes regulated under the Fed, effectively they only have to answer to the Fed as a bank, and that really simplifies this sort of 50-state headache that companies that aren't federally regulated banks often experience. Now, I thought it was quite interesting that in November, Ripple also had a $500 million cap raise, which Citadel Securities was one of the key investors in. So obviously some of these institutions knew that this was going to happen ahead of time, and hence the significant level of investment that we've seen. Now, the last thing to note on this is that XRP, which is the token issued by Ripple, hasn't really rallied. And in fact, it's down 3.9% over the course of the week. A very popular token that investors like to hold. We think one of the main reasons that the token hasn't rallied is, number one, many of XRP's investors and community saw this coming, and so it was somewhat priced in. But the second thing is that generally the market is in a bit of a doldrum at the moment, and so even on positive price news, price swings haven't been significant or sustained to the upside. And perhaps lastly and more importantly is that in order for Ripple's price to go up over time, aside from just investors looking to buy and hold, we want to see more use of XRP in the ecosystem or used for stablecoin transfers. But as it stands, Ripple's stablecoin, RLUSD, is only about 0.4% or 1.3 billion of the total stablecoin supply market, which exceeds $300 billion. So that's about 0.4%. Until Ripple stablecoin gets more of a share and more fees are payable in XRP, we don't see any structural demand from institutions to drive the price of XRP higher. So good news for Ripple, but sort of mixed sentiment still on XRP, given that we're not in a strong market at the moment.